As every day passes, we get closer and closer to Jurassic World Rebirth. It's also Jurassic June. To celebrate, I figured we could talk about all of the previous movies and talk about the creature designs in those movies, how they held up then and how they hold up now. We already did the first two films in the franchise, and so now it's time to talk about the black sheep of the family, Jurassic Park 3. Let's get right into it. This is another one that I like, that not a lot of other people like. And I do understand a lot of the problems that it has. There certainly are some story problems, some of the character decisions are kind of strange, some of the some of the characters in general just aren't the most likable out there, but this film still does have a place in my heart. It was my favorite for the longest time when I was younger. It was the film that introduced me to my all-time favorite dinosaur, Spinosaurus, and it's overall very fun. And I think one of the highlights of this film are the creature designs. The colors on the dinosaurs in the Jurassic franchise have never looked better than in this film. And yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. So the first creature we'll talk about is Triceratops. We see it right here. It has sort of like a green coloration, which is something I dig. You can also see that it has some stripes right there from like the aerial view. There's also some Stegosaurus here. I'm not going to focus about the Stegosaurus specifically because it kind of has the same overall idea that it did in the Lost World. So, we'll pretty much just leave it at that. The Stegosaurus looks pretty dang good. But one thing that stands out to me with the Triceratops is this right here. Doesn't this model look a little bit disproportionate? It's got like a huge body. The tail seems pretty good, and actually the snout seems better overall, and the size of the frill too, but I don't know, there's just something about the way that its body looks that's just so interesting. You could tell that it was mostly meant to be like a background dinosaur rather than being something that was, front and center. But it's a pretty fun start to the list, I think. After that is the Parasaurolophus. Now, it basically has the same model from the Lost World. However, this time it's green, and it looks pretty dang good. It looks like it's suited for jungle life, and I quite like it. Everything else that I said about the Lost World Jurassic Park Parasaurolophus still applies to this, and the fact that it's thin, and yeah, mostly that it's thin. However, I was going through some of these shots of the herd, and there's actually some young Parasaurolophus that actually have a reduced crest. That's awesome. I love that. I love seeing stuff like that. Good job. And then the first and only time we ever see Corythosaurus is also in this herd. Now that's something I love. I love seeing like herds of like a mixture of different animals. It's really cool to see that today with wildebeest and zebras and things like that. So I love seeing it with extinct creatures, like, just seeing Corythosaurs hanging out with Parasaurolophus. I really like the Corythosaurus design. It's a shame that we don't really see it anymore in the franchise because it has most of everything you'd expect from a Corythosaurus, aside from the fact that, like the Parasaurolophus, it is still too thin. But it has that crest that you'd expect. The shape of the head looks pretty good. And, it's able to go from bipedal and quadrupedal locomotion, much like any other hadrosaur would. The colors are also a huge standout with these yellows and the sort of brownish coloration like on the counter shading. It looks really good, and also how bright that crest is. So it's a fantastic design that I would love to see more of, and again, it's unfortunate that we haven't seen more of it later in the franchise. After that is the Brachiosaurus that has a redesign. Like, this is completely different from the first Jurassic Park film. It doesn't sport a singular, like, sort of gray coloration. Rather, you actually get a green coloration, which that's kind of consistent. A lot of these animals are sporting a green coloration, even though Stegosauruses in the background kind of have a green coloration. But it has that green coloration with some really cool looking patterns, as well as a head that is a little bit more red. That also rhymes. Good. It seems like that is an example of sexual dimorphism in the movie, as some of them have a red head and others do not. So you could probably assume that the ones with the red head are males and the ones that don't are females, which is a cool little detail. I didn't mention this for the Jurassic Park portion, but notice how high those nostrils are. That's actually an outdated thing. The consensus seems to be that the nostrils were a lot lower on the animal's snout and not nearly that high up close to the top of the head. Now, the openings, their nares, those are on like their head, but that doesn't mean that's where the nostrils would have sat. Rather, they would have sat a lot closer to the mouth. That certainly makes a lot more sense overall. But I really do like these Brachiosaurus designs. I love seeing some color placed onto them. And the boat scene where they're moving past them just looks really cool. Compsognathus makes a brief little appearance. Basically the same things that I said about its appearance in The Lost World applies to this. The Ankylosaurus. This is the best that Ankylosaurus has ever looked in this franchise. It has the model overall is a little bit outdated. Like, it looks like its armor piece on the back is one solid thing, when in reality, Ankylosaurus just had like these little individual osteoderms that were scattered throughout the whole body. It wasn't just like a solid shell type thing. But that aside, the whole skeletal structure looks pretty decent. It does have its club at the end of its tail, and the colors are a true standout. I love the red on the face and the white underbelly with the darker coloration on top. It just looks really good in my mind, and it's a real shame that we haven't really seen these colors since then. Like, we go into later movies and they kind of sport duller coloration. I vote that we go back to this coloration because it looks great. Next up is the one and only Tyrannosaurus Rex that makes an appearance in this movie. Much like the buck, it does sport a green coloration, and it does have more pronounced eyebrow ridges, which suggests that this is a male Tyrannosaur, which of course is kind of confirmed by its name, which is Bull. I know that there's a lot of people who think that this is Junior from The Lost World, but as it currently stands, that is an unconfirmed fan theory, and it's pretty unlikely that it is Junior. It's most likely that this is just a new T-Rex that they made, one that can be absolutely decimated by the Spinosaurus. Its animatronic looks great though, and green coloration on T-Rex is always really cool in this franchise, especially with those pronounced eyebrow ridges. I just love it. Next up is the Pteranodon, and the Pteranodons are an interesting one. I love the way that they look. I love the whole shape of their head. They got the crest on the back, and the way that their beak looks really good, and I love the way that their bodies look as well, and the practical effects look amazing. Their coloration is also amazing. One thing that bugs me though is the fact that they have teeth. One of the biggest reasons why that bugs me is, well, of course, because Pteranodon did not have teeth, but also the name Pteranodon translates to toothless wing. It was named that because it didn't have teeth. And these guys have teeth. It's just a fun little observation that I've always had. But, I like the way that they look regardless. I love the way that their eyes look, especially when they're peering at you. It's just so terrifying. A little bit unfortunate that they are naked. They don't lack, or, they don't have any small amounts of fuzz, which I think was a later thing that would be applied. So not the fault of the film, but all around, very cool and very classic Pteranodon depiction. This looks like very classic Hollywood. Next up is the Velociraptors. This is the best that the Velociraptors have ever looked. These are by far my favorite designs of these ever. They look great. The shape of their skull has actually been thinned a little bit more, which is a lot more reminiscent with both Deinonychus and Velociraptor. But of course, the biggest standout, like with many of these creatures, are the colors. The males look amazing with their coloration. It's sort of like a bluish purplish coloration with a white stripe and like a red crest, which they didn't have that crest, by the way, but Not to mention the quills, which was a step in the direction towards feathers, I suppose, in these designs. They look so good. And the female looks awesome too. And I just love that there's sexual dimorphism between them as well. The female looks a little bit more reminiscent to the previous Jurassic Park raptors that we've seen in the fact that she lacks the quills, and her coloration still looks amazing as well. You have sort of a base coloration of white with some black spots, and the way that she just stares at you with her eyes, terrifying. They killed it with the Velociraptors in this movie, and I'm so glad that Rebirth seems to be taking this route in terms of their Velociraptor portrayals. We also have the very brief cameo from the Ceratosaurus. Now, I'll say this, that I'm not really the biggest fan of the way that this Ceratosaurus looks. Overall, its skull is a little bit too rounded, too bulky, I suppose. It also has a singular horn rather than a structure that looks more like a crest on its nose. And it also does lack its lacrimal crests, which are things that are present on the real life animal. Ceratosaurus is one of my favorite dinosaurs, so those are things I love to see on the animal, and those are just things that are lacking in this model. I have heard some people say that this is simply just a tweaked T-Rex model, which certainly does explain some of the design elements, like the shape of the skull and whatnot. But yeah, it's probably one of my least favorites, but it's only briefly in the film. Colors are cool though. The red coloration with the black stripes, that's awesome. I like that. And finally, the big one, the Spinosaurus. This is where the animal became a household name. This is where everybody learned about it. It made its big cinematic debut by completely demolishing the largest predatory animal to ever exist, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the predatory land animal, of course, and it stole the hearts of many. Of course, when I watched this, I was 5 years old. That's when I first saw this movie. Before that, my favorite dinosaur was T-Rex, like most kids. Most kids, they do have T-Rex as their favorite. But when I saw this movie and I saw the Spinosaurus defeat the T-Rex, I was like, that's my new favorite. And then it became my new favorite. Nowadays, that's not why it's my favorite now, because nowadays, there's Spinosaurus, it was more so an animal rather than a movie monster, but it's still my favorite nowadays just because of how fascinating it is. But this design is still absolutely amazing. I just got the Hammond Collection Spinosaurus. It's up there. You can barely kind of see it. There you go, right next to the Rebirth Spinosaurus. I love that thing so much. This is an iconic design that was fairly accurate for the time. At the time, in the early 2000s, late 90s, Spinosaurus was thought to be basically just a large baryonyx with a sail on its back, and that's what this is. Now, there are things that don't match up for the time, the biggest being the snout. The snout is a baryonyx snout, and we did have the snout of Spinosaurus at the time, so that is an inaccuracy for the time. But regardless, still looks amazing. You know, it's got those huge and powerful arms, it's got the sail with really cool blue patterns in it, and the sounds that it makes, those roars, just chef's kiss. It's amazing. I've been saying this a lot these last few days, but it's easily my favorite fictional Spinosaurus out there. Like, it's so cool. The coloration is incredible. The animatronic is incredible, which, by the way, the animatronic is the largest animatronic that was made for a film, which is amazing. It actually destroyed the T-Rex animatronic. There were going to be some scenes where the animatronics were fighting each other, because in the movie, it ended up being just the CGI models fighting each other. But if you look at some behind the scenes things, you'll notice there's some shots of like the claw hitting the T-Rex and whatnot. Those never made it into the final film. And I'd assume one of the biggest reasons why that happened is because the Spinosaurus animatronic actually broke the T-Rex animatronic. So on set, the Spinosaurus actually won the fight. Both on set and in the movie, which is just so funny to me. But no, it's really amazing stuff that they did with this movie. This movie, its production value, I think, is amazing. They killed it with the dinosaur designs and the coloration that went into those dinosaur designs. And plus the sound design is also really cool. So I think it's a pretty underrated Jurassic Park film. It's not my favorite film or close to it, but it's still a fantastic film that's just really enjoyable to watch, you know, and I think it gets a bad rap. Despite the fact that it's still just a pretty fun movie. So what do you guys think of Jurassic Park 3? Do you like the creatures? Do you like the story? Do you like the movie in general? Be sure to let me know. And if you like dinosaur-related content, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you on board. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.